You're listening to Make Me Data Literate from the Australian Data Science Education Institute. I'm your host, Dr. Linda McIver, author of Raising Heretics, Teaching Kids to Change the World. Let's go change your mind about data. Welcome back to another episode of Make Me Data Literate. I've been wanting to interview this guest for a while, so I'm very excited to bring you Dr. Sarah Beecroft. Welcome, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So let's start off with who are you and what do you do?
Uh, well, as you said, I'm Dr. Sarah Beecroft. My job now is working at the Pawsey Supercomputing Research Centre as a supercomputing specialist. Um, so this means that I help researchers and scientists from all around Australia use our supercomputer. So this might mean that I give them training, it might mean I'm troubleshooting their code, it might mean that I'm working in the background to implement new features that researchers want. Um, but before doing this, I was actually a biologist. So I did a human biology degree, which feels very disconnected from where I am now, working in computing. Um, so yeah, did the bio degree, didn't do any coding there. Uh, did an honours at University of Western Australia and picked up a little bit of coding, and I realised that I actually really like data analysis and statistics, um, which I wasn't expecting. And then did a PhD in rare disease, um, or like rare neurogenetic disease gene discovery. So finding out which genes are making people have these really terrible diseases. And that is actually pretty computationally heavy because to analyze all the genetic data, you need to use computers. So I was what I would jokingly call a soggy scientist because I could do both wet and dry lab. Uh, yeah, I could do the data analysis side, and I did that, and I liked that part the most. But I could also go into the lab and chop up a piece of someone's muscle from a biopsy, extract the protein out of it, and do the Western blot to analyze the abundance and the size of the protein. I could grow cells in a dish from people that have passed away. You take fibroblasts while they're alive, and often they, don't survive, and yeah, you end up growing these cells trying to figure out what happened, and uh, you know, making transfecting other different types of cells to grow glow green and doing confocal microscopy. But I left all that behind, all the wet lab stuff, to focus on my one true love, which is kind of data analysis and getting into the gritty computational aspect of things, which I realized actually I really, really like. So that's something I really enjoy doing at Pawsey.
That is so cool. You can do all of the things.
Yeah, I guess so. Arguably, I wasn't amazing, I have to say, at the wet lab stuff. Like I was quite cell culture was always a struggle for me because you have to have incredible focus for a long time so you don't contaminate your cells. Like you can't like put your hand over the open dish or something because then like that's bad practice and you might get contamination. So that wasn't so good. But the other parts, like the Western blots, I got pretty good at, and like growing, doing like really finicky, delicate things. Like we were growing cells on these really thin glass cover slips, and then you had to do all these things to these glass cover slips that were in the bottom of these wells, take them out with a pair of tweezers and glue them basically onto like the glass slide so you could image them under the microscope. And so doing that with your pair of tweezers, I'm proud to say I don't think I broke any cover slips, which yeah, my supervisor couldn't manage it. She broke loads, so I was so proud of myself.
That's incredible. I can confidently say I do not have the fine motor skills for that kind of activity.
Yeah, it's not something I realized I could do. Like you find out all these funny things about yourself when you put in these weird situations, and you're like, pretty mediocre, like gross motor skills. Like I'm quite clumsy sometimes, but fine motor skills, top notch apparently. So hooray for that, because that's something that you use all the time in your daily life for sure. I'm joking.
So what did you have to learn to do what you're doing now? And we've already sort of got a hint of that. But I'm fascinated by the way so many people get into computing and especially high performance computing, HPC, via something else entirely, and then they teach themselves some, tech skills, and suddenly they're in a whole new industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild. And I totally agree with you. I think most people don't follow a linear career trajectory in these types of fields.
Mm.
Um, so I haven't met pretty much anyone in a STEM field that has, well, actually, no, that's not true. I went to school with one person and she went to what she called nerd camp in year 10. And she decided at that point that she was going to become a chemical engineer. And I've lost touch with her, but like, I'm pretty sure she's still a chemical engineer now. So,
Wow.
she had a linear career path and that's actually great. But pretty much everyone else I've met has had this kind of popcorn one thing going to the next. So for me, yeah, the human biology, I had no idea about coding. I didn't realize that would actually be something I could do or be interested in. I fell into it by accident, as a lot of people do, uh, trying to solve an unmet need within our lab. So with all of this genetic data, we had to do all this like post-processing. So you get the sequencing data back and that's cool, but it's not like a biological insight yet. It's just something, you have to do a lot of processing and filtration to get something useful out of it that you can then like scientifically analyze.
Mm.
And so I picked up a bit of bash coding there to improve our data processes. And so actually implementing a bash for loop was like a big innovation in the lab at the time. Um,
Wow.
yeah, because we just didn't have the skill set. Like it was a wet lab
Yeah.
originally, and then it's kind of slowly transitioning to be wet and dry. Um, so yeah, I kind of taught myself that, and it was a pretty slow process, I have to say. Took a while to get going, and then I kind of kept building on that throughout my PhD. Um, but the main thing at Pawsey is they were looking for someone that can do this translational piece, I suppose. So something I had been doing a lot was doing like training and like networking events. So like, you know, I saw an unmet need in the community, and so I started doing those events. And Pawsey was like, "Oh, this is the type of person that we need because you can talk
Mm.
to people, but you also get biologists and you can do a bit of the computing stuff." And so actually, when I started at Pawsey, I had not really run a bunch of jobs on the supercomputer, so I had to learn, all the scheduling stuff and basically all the inner workings of HPC I learned on the job. Um, which has been really cool and really interesting, but also bad for my imposter syndrome because it's like, oh, all these other people, they know how to do things in Fortran, and like I don't know that, and but I think what I bring is, it's like the bigger picture thinking, which is what we've needed to support life sciences in HPC, where there has traditionally been a disconnect. But now I can do
Yeah.
a lot of the technical stuff quite well, so I'm happy about that.
I think that confirms what I said on Einstein a Go Go a couple of weeks ago, which is that the tech is easy. It's the people that are hard. Um,
Mm,
and you hit the wall with tech and get frustrated, and it can feel insurmountable. But once you've got it, you've got it. Whereas you can understand a person one day and be completely flummoxed by them the next. So it's not, it's much more complicated, really, the people side. Um,
yeah, I agree with that. Like, not to downplay the technical skills of the people that I work with, but also
mm,
once you get up to like the higher decision making things of like, what should we do? Where should we
mm,
go? How are we going to get the money from the government to do this?
mm,
That's all people.
yeah,
And it's less of a science and more of an art, which is really hard. Like some people, they make it look easy, but if you're not one of them, you just yeah, it can be very tricky. So I think it's important, like you say, to have this recognition that those skills are important, for sure.
well, the CEO of Pawsey is going to love this conversation, seeing as he's a literature major.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've chatted before about that, like with him,
Yeah.
or like, corridor conversation type of thing. And like it is really important.
Mm,
And in for someone like him, like he needs to be really good at this people part, and he is.
yeah.
It doesn't matter if he can code in Bash or Fortran or whatever. Like it doesn't, it's irrelevant to his skill set. What we need is someone like him to go out and do the people and the strategy. Um,
Yes. Yes, absolutely. But this man we're talking about, Mark Stickles, is also very open about the fact that he also has imposter syndrome, and he
Oh wow.
feels, he's very conscious of his lack of technical skills. Uh, Whereas, he could learn them if he wanted to, but he doesn't have the time or the need. And that comes back to this idea that is, again, confirmed by your story, which is it's much easier to learn technical skills when you have a problem to solve, when you have a reason to learn this particular skill, when you've got this unmet need, and you're like, well, hey, if I could do this with tech, I could do it faster or more efficiently or more accurately. Suddenly you've got a reason to learn it. And I think that's been missing from our coding education and also our maths and statistics education. Did you learn any code at school?
No. So I'm a millennial. I'm 35 now. So no, wasn't a thing. Like we did have computing as a class, but
Mm.
I was like, I actually don't know what they learned in there. But I was also like, that's not relevant to me. Like, ew.
Right? Yes. Yes, people still think that. It's not relevant. It's not interesting. You got to make it relevant. That's
Yeah.
yeah, you're just validating my work here, so I'm
Great.
smug mode.
Yeah.
Um, Is there one thing that you wish everybody knew about data? Something that you just go, oh, it would change everything if people just got this thing?
So yeah, that is a big question. I think something I would like to see people have is better foundational understanding of kind of how to understand numbers and figures that are presented to you, by your bank or in the media or these types of things, because it's so easy to misrepresent data and facts. And so it looks legit, but it's really not. Um, and so I see a lot of that around. I mean, it's so common. I would hope people could be empowered to see through these dodgy kind of metrics. I think that would be great. And also financially as well, because I mean, that's the type of data. I think it's empowering if you can be financially literate. And it took me a while to learn that myself. Like when I came out of school, I was terrible with money, and now I'm a lot better, thank God. Um, but yeah, those are two things I think would really help the everyday person.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I'm just gonna cut and paste this entire podcast as sort of validation for the existence of the Australian Data Science Education Institute. Like this is the thing, putting these skills into the context of stuff that actually matters, that will impact your life. And when somebody shows you a graph and there's no zero on the scale, what are they trying to do? What are they trying
Mm.
to make you think? What's the story here? Um, what are the worst data mistakes that you've seen?
Um, so I guess this is coming more from a professional, sciencey type of bent, but you definitely see some people that maybe don't have a great understanding of basic statistics. And when you're designing a scientific experiment, you want to make sure that you have thought about this type of thing. And it's a really, really, really common complaint from, you know, bioinformaticians, people that are doing this data analysis, and they're meant to be the ones with a strong statistical understanding, that they will have someone come in and be like, hey, I've got like two replicates. Can you like do statistics on this? It's like, dude, I can't do anything with two of anything. Like that is not enough for science. Do you think you could have like spoken to me about this like 6 months ago before you spent all this money on a stupid thing? And yeah, it's just like, what are you doing? Please, like, either learn the statistics or come talk to me first. So I think the basic lack of statistical analysis is really concerning, and that's quite a widespread problem. Like I did a little bit of statistics in my undergrad because I did an epidemiology unit, and so that was actually really
Oh,
good.
cool.
Um, but it wasn't like a core requirement or anything, so you could have easily
Yeah.
gone through and not done that. And then I started a master's, which I didn't finish, and part of that included some uh, like a unit of statistics as coursework, and that was actually so useful.
Mm.
And I'm really glad I did that. But most scientists don't actually get the hardcore statistical training, and it's a
No.
huge gap. It's a huge gap, and yeah, I just think it's a big problem. Like, you shouldn't have only one person in the team who doesn't get listened to that's doing
Yeah.
your statistics when
Oh.
it's like the core part of your job. Uh,
So many statisticians who are listening to this are going, "Oh God, yes."
right?
Hitting their heads on the
Yeah.
desk. I'm astounded by the fact, and I noticed this when I started ADSI, that it's still possible to do a science degree and not cover data at all.
Mm,
And like the data management and analysis and stuff that I see scientists doing really is like
bad.
horrifically, yeah. It's shocking. It's just shocking. And it's not, deliberate. It's just they don't know any better because it's not part of the training. And I don't think we can keep doing that.
It's not really enough. And the other thing is, people finding it really scary. Like,
Oh
I
yes.
like statistics, and I think my dream job would actually be to be like a data scientist. If I could do it all again, maybe I would do that. I probably wouldn't. I like where I am, but like,
Mm.
that sounds fun to me. So I'm
Mm.
weird in that way. That's. But this idea, I see from other people in the lab who are really good at what they were good at, and being like, okay, but we need to think about the statistics, and they're like, oh no, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. It's not,
Yeah.
it is a little bit scary to start with, but it's okay. Like, you manage to learn all this other really difficult stuff. You can
Mm.
learn this, so maybe it needs to be taught differently. I don't know.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
um you
Absolutely
know
it does.
and what's the difference between a p-value and a confidence interval? Like, the
Yeah.
p-value is, we're always chasing the small p-value to show that it's true, and like, well, no, that's actually a lot more complicated than that. What is the confidence
Yeah.
interval? Like, what's the effect size, blah 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 blah, all these other things. So yeah, I guess you have to work with the data that you have, and help it become, it's almost like extracting like a sculpture out of a piece of stone or something. Like, there's a story in there it's trying to tell you. You just have to work with it to get it out. And once you find it, it can be so interesting and kind of beautiful in a way.
Mm.
um I don't know if
I,
that's a strange perspective to have, but whatever.
No, no, it absolutely speaks to me. And it's one of the things, I work with data a lot more than I ever have before in this job. And I'm just like, I get so excited when I see a data set and I think, oh, I could figure out this
Mm,
thing, or, oh, what can it tell me and what can I find out? And it's just, it's such a thrill. And sometimes you get, such insight that you didn't have before. And it's really um it's a really powerful feeling, and I'm
mm,
sad that we don't offer that to kids the way we currently teach it. I was looking, giving some feedback to Akara on the senior secondary maths curriculum, and I was looking at some of the resources around for the stats section of math methods, in particular the probability section, and all of the resources are coin tosses and taking colored urns out of balls. Sorry, colored balls out of urns, and I'm just like, what? Why would they care? Like, students,
mm.
like, we could be doing so much better than this. What about the odds of getting through to the switchboard when you're trying to buy Taylor Swift tickets, or
Ooh, that's
or
a
the
hot
odds.
topic.
Right? Like, you could make it so much more interesting while teaching the same content, and so much more relevant, and give them actually a reason to care about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you may have just pushed a button there.
No, I mean,
But
that's
it is
great, and it's
it's
interesting for me.
beautiful if you know what it can do.
Yeah, and you don't get to find that out until you're like really, really, really down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Um, and I never would have, like, I actually wasn't particularly great at maths at
Mm,
school, because a lot of it is arithmetic, right?
mm,
As in, like, even in advanced maths, you're still like, they want you to mentally work out X things, and if you put the number in the wrong place, then the whole thing's broken, which I was always really
yeah.
bad at, making a lot of these quote unquote careless mistakes.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
it's so frustrating. And
Yeah.
but once you're actually doing like legit statistics, you don't do any of the maths yourself. You understand the concepts and you're thinking in a different way. And but you
Yeah.
don't get to do the fun stuff until you've suffered all these other things first.
Yes.
And I always thought like, oh, I'd never like statistics because I didn't really love maths, but it's not true at all. Um, I was really surprised about. Like, I fell into it by accident because it was applied, basically.
I literally have a friend who is a biostatistician who says the same thing, and I will
Whoa.
get her on the podcast eventually. But yeah, like she hated maths at school. She now has a PhD in stats, and she's an associate professor. Like, yeah, it, it's
Wow. That's
it really
amazing.
says something about the way we're teaching it and the experience of it in schools that we're really missing the mark quite severely.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. All right. Got distracted from the questions there, as I do.
Yep.
Have you ever seen data deliberately misused, and how do you spot it?
Oh man. I mean, it's kind of all the time, I think.
Mm.
Even with these like buy now, pay later type of things. Um, they're not upfront with the what is it really costing you?
Yes.
Or like, sure, you can have this mortgage, but you actually work out, how much interest you're paying over the decades, and it's more than the house is worth.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not saying that, banks are misrepresenting, like the information is there, but it's yeah, it's hard to I think get the full picture of what does it mean for you as an individual, but also things like we had an election relatively recently in Australia, and I'm sure they would be, if you wanted to pull out some examples, there was lots of things about can we afford to implement this nuclear power plan?
Mm.
Um, and, what is the real cost of that? And it's just so hard to truly know, to cut through all the spin and say, like, well, what is the most economically sensible solution, if not environmentally? Like, that's a different question, I suppose.
Yeah.
How can you spot it? I mean, it's so difficult. I guess you need to be asking questions of like, you know, is there more information here than what the person is telling me? Have I read all the terms and conditions? Um, yeah, I don't think I have like a single tip for like, oh, you need to watch out for the error bars type of thing, unfortunately. I'm sure
Yeah.
other people or yourself have talked about it in other episodes, but I guess be suspicious. Don't
No, I think that's
trust no
great
one.
advice. Yeah. It's that the challenge then is, and I like to call it like rational skepticism. You need to be
Yes.
skeptical, but you need to be rationally skeptical and, not just like wholesale, science is all lies, like
Oh, yeah.
there's a fine line between being skeptical to the point of conspiracy theories and being rationally skeptical and actually being able to evaluate the evidence, which
Mm.
is a big part of what I do. Try
Yeah.
to try to train kids and teachers to be on the correct side of that line, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I guess it's more seeking to understand rather than being overly skeptical. Like, if someone tells you, like, oh, I had this really great holiday in Bali and I went to this place and I did this thing, and you're like, okay, well, that sounds nice, but I know that you're a party animal and I like to be in bed by 9. So you would
Mm,
kind of like, you listen to what they're saying, but you're like, okay, but like, what's the bigger picture? What were you doing there? Would I like that?
mm,
Is this, you, you you take it on board and you listen, but you're also like, well, is there more to the story? Not like
right.
everybody is out to get me with
Yeah.
data.
It's like my grandfather lived 100 years and smoked, 2 packs of
Yes,
cigarettes a day. Well, okay.
I'm sure he did, but that is not how it is for most people. And it would be really interesting to study him and figure out how he managed to tamp down all the mutations that should have caused him cancer and he didn't. Like
Yeah.
he's an outlier, and that's biologically
Yes.
really interesting. But it
Yes.
doesn't mean that you should smoke or
Yeah.
vape.
Yes. There was a whole interesting thing that came up recently about the longevity studies, these kind of these little communities that have people who've lived unexpectedly long, and
Mm.
a lot of them turn out to be anomalies of data collection.
Oh,
So like,
really?
yeah, so one of them, I can't remember the area, but one of these little communities, it turned out that um, they just weren't reporting the deaths because you could still collect, like, I don't know, some form of benefit or food or something, like, so there were things like that where or their birth dates were a little fudged, or things where when you actually look into it, turns out it's not real.
Wow, that's amazing and kind of sad.
Yeah.
Um, that's a very true concept as well, I would say, for bioinformatics and science in general, is like garbage in, garbage out. If your input
Yeah.
data is garbage, don't
Yeah.
be expecting to get something really good out the other end. So that you
Right.
have to be
And
pretty stringent.
it's always that question then of how good is your data? And also the question that I always tell people to start a project with, which is, what's wrong with my data? Because there's no
Mm,
such thing as a perfect data set. So the question is, what's wrong with it? How wrong is it? And is it good enough for my purposes? And what's good enough for my purposes might not be good enough for Sarah's purposes, depending on what it is that you're trying to do with that data. And I think a lot of issues that we see coming up as a result of data science are people trying to do things with data that it's not up
mm,
to. It's not, that data is not good enough for that purpose, or it's not, doesn't answer that question, or it doesn't have the level of accuracy required. And it's particularly a problem when you get instruments and things that report to 4 decimal places but actually don't have the level of precision to get to 4 decimal places, so that the last three of those decimal places are completely fabricated.
wow, like rounding error or something. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I really like that as an approach. I have to say, like, what's wrong with my data? Because it
Mm.
forces you to think about the limitations, which there always are. And
Yes.
if you know what they are, well, that might be fine because you can adjust for it statistically, or you
Yeah.
can get around it, or you can just say, these are the conclusions I can confidently make. These
Mm.
are the conclusions that I could tentatively make, but I'm not really sure about, and these are the things I cannot say. And like
Yeah.
that's really strong. That's a really strong approach. That's really awesome. I promise Linda
And
didn't pay me to say that.
this whole episode, honestly, is just
I
such
know.
good advertising. We did not set this up at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important, and being able to say what you can't do with the data is a skill that we don't teach at all. And
Mm,
I'm trying to build that into my projects, is always to go, well, where is the line here? I'm fascinated. I'm working on losing weight at the moment, and I can step on the scales, off again, and then on, and get up to 3 kilos difference.
wow.
Yeah, and these are nice new scales, and they have a digital readout, and we tend to kind of assume or just kind of believe that digital scales are more accurate than analog scales with the wobbly
Mm,
needle, but they're not. Um, uh, and the variance between readings can be, so I've got a spreadsheet now, and I measure it 3 times every time. And
wow.
the variance can be 0, or the variance can be 4 kilos, and it's, I have not figured out why, like, and there may not be a why, like, it's just that they're not accurate, they're not that accurate.
Wow.
But we assume that they are, and sometimes we would get on the scales one day and go, oh, it's 300 grams more than it was yesterday. That's noise. That's not a real result. 300 grams is just noise in the face of that level of inaccuracy. So I
Mm.
think understanding that is um, a really important skill.
Yeah, wow. I hadn't noticed that, which is really interesting. And you might have people thinking like, oh, it's gone up a bit today. Oh no, what
Mm,
did I do wrong? Type of thing.
mm, mm,
Um, I have a friend that's a dietitian now, and one of the things she does say is like, if you are measuring yourself every day, like that's fine, but don't take it too much to heart because like maybe you just need, you drank a bit more water yesterday
Mm,
or something, so
mm.
don't worry about it. But that's actually missing this potential uh, instrument inaccuracy, which yeah, I don't know that her or I have thought about.
Yeah. Well, if you have scales available too, I invite you to try. Step on and off a few times and
Yeah.
do it on a few different days and see what kind of results you get. It's really interesting.
I think I will. I do have scales. I'm going to try it. I
Oh,
have to
good.
now. I mean, I just, I love that type of thing.
You can tell me whether it was whether you were getting big levels of variance or not. I'll
Yeah.
be interested. Um, what's the first question you ask when you look at graphs in the media?
Oh, yeah. Good question. Um, I mean, I think the biggest thing is who is making this graph and
Mm,
do they tend to be reliable in general? So, for example, if I see a graph from The Guardian or ABC, I'm a lot more likely to be like, yeah, all right, it's probably legit, as opposed to, I don't know, a graph from someone trying to sell me something,
mm.
or from a political party. I never really trust those. Um, I have like no offense to any political party. Just have to they are trying to make a point, right? To support
Yep.
their party. Um, so yeah, like what is the story it's trying to tell? Um, and what information have they excluded from this graph as
Yeah.
well? And have they chosen a format that makes sense? So sometimes, you see something and you're like, oh, that shouldn't really be a bar graph. It should be represented
Mm,
in this other way to give you a bit more information. If I'm looking at something a bit more sciencey, um, I want to see, uh, uh, is there a line of best fit or are there error
mm.
bars or like how well is this explained and well does how strongly supported are their conclusions from this graph and from the data set,
Yeah.
which I guess isn't usually in the media. But yeah, what are they not showing? I think is the biggest question.
Yeah. That's a really important one. And there's been some interesting studies that show that people believe science reporting more if there are graphs in the
Oh wow.
article, even if the graphs are completely irrelevant to the story. They did some great studies of putting in random like, or not just graphs but pictures. They'll put in pictures of the brain in a story, and the pictures don't give any information that's
Hmm.
relevant to the story, but people believe it more. And I think it's difficult to train yourself to ask those skeptical questions. But once you start doing it, you can't stop. It's a little bit
Mm.
like when I was teaching my year 11s usability. They come to me and go, "You have ruined me. I can't even use a door now without critiquing the usability of it. Websites are a nightmare." Like, I
Oh
love that
wow.
because they're thinking about it, and it's the same with data. You once you start thinking about it and you start asking those questions, you can't stop, and that's when you become a really potent force, hopefully for good.
Yeah, and it's fun. Like you're, uncovering kind of the deeper insights, I think, which is quite interesting as well. You're
Mm.
getting closer to the bigger story or the deeper story, if you want to look at it that way.
Yes, absolutely. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What excites you about data?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think what we just talked about
Mm.
earlier, which is finding the story that it's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Um, I really, yeah, I really like that. Like, I really actually used to enjoy sitting down with a data set and be like, what have you got for me today? Type of thing. I remember I also used to say like, oh, you kind of need to like get to know your data set. So you got to, get in there and tool around with it, get your hands dirty, so to speak, and explore it, which is it's like it's kind of like an adventure. So
Yeah.
I used to find that really fun. Um, and yeah, when you do get like some kind of insight out of it, it's just so exciting. Um, and like I did this study, which was 2,249. I wish there was just one more person. I don't know why that bothers me so much. 2,249 patients who we did put through this gene testing panel in like a diagnostic sense. And so I was analyzing all of the patients, what disease did they have, what mutation in what gene, what was the diagnostic success rate from different age groups, from different disease groups, who's most likely to get diagnosed, who's least likely to get diagnosed, where are the gaps.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
it was so fun. The data cleaning was horrendous, but once I got
Yeah.
past that, it was really great. And yeah, I was just like, this is so cool because I can confidently say now, like we had kind of, had the vibe in the lab of like this, kids are more likely to get diagnosed. We know
Yeah.
that. And these disease groups have a better diagnostic success rate. These other ones, it's a bit more garbage. But being able to confidently say, like, actually, the evidence shows this, and we found this unexpected thing is just like so exciting. Um, yeah, really, I just love it. I don't know. Um, why? Why? I don't. I guess it's like a puzzle. Like I like
Yeah.
puzzles. I like figuring things out. I really always want to understand the why of these types of things, and I love biology, so it's like puzzle biology. Well, what more could you want?
That's awesome. I love that. That's a beautiful note to end on. I think that whole puzzle thing, that whole the potential to figure stuff out is it's a gift.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a privilege to get to do that type of work, which I think is why a lot of academics and researchers put up with job insecurity and
Yeah.
stress and short-term contracts and an uncertain funding environment. They put up with it because they just love the work so much.
Yes.
It's like addictive in a way.
Yes.
Um, and apparently, with mice, looking at addiction studies, if you give the mice, so they like push on a lever and then they get some kind of reward, sugar water or
Yeah.
something, I can't remember.
Hmm.
If you give them the reward intermittently when they do the thing, they're more likely to keep trying. And I feel like that's how it is with research. Like, oh, this one paid off. Oh, yeah. um,
Simple
so,
creatures, researchers.
yeah, they're after the high, I
Yeah.
think, and just
Yeah.
the intellectual fascination. So, and I did really love it, but um, I just couldn't handle the insecurity and I was a bit burnt out. So
Yeah.
um, working at Pawsey is much more stable and I still get to do intellectually interesting things, but with a lot less of the stress. But I look
That's
back very
awesome.
fondly on my time in research and, there's the highs are so high. Um, the excitement is really hard to beat, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Thank
Hmm.
you so much. This has been the best conversation, and I'm gonna have to use it as advertising for
Yeah.
Etsy.
How funny is that? I really had no idea that it would turn out that way. But yeah, it's been really good, and it's been really interesting to hear more about what you're doing and just to nerd out. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, gotta love a good nerd session. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Make Me Data Literate. If you'd like to support the work of the Australian Data Science Education Institute, you can donate at givenow.com.au/ADSEI or via the ADSI website. Let's change the world together.